Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. So for today we are going to take a look at another rare Esper. This Esper is Tang. Now this Esper doesn't get named a lot. I think that this Esper doesn't get named a lot as compared to like Drew, Freddy, or maybe Suhua and Changpu and some of the other 3-star Espers out there. But I think that's for a very good reason, and he's not terrible. In fact, he is extremely strong. However, the reason why he isn't mentioned that much is probably because of his typing over here. So he is a wind type Esper, but the problem with him is that he multi-hits. So being a wind type Esper, he is naturally not very viable for Chronos, and being a multi-hitter makes him not viable for APEP as well. So he finds himself in a very weird place, especially for the early game where he's not really, in my opinion, that viable for a lot of content. So he's not gonna be good for like all the early game ritual miracles. However, I do feel like he is very, very powerful, very exceptional for content such as the Spatial Tower, the Temporal Tower, maybe the Cube Miracle, and probably even some early game PvP. I have yet to see him used in endgame PvP, or at least I have seen him used a bit, but I haven't really seen him shine that much. So anyway, for this video, we're going to take a look at Tang and how I built him and where I use him the most. Now without further ado, let's start off with his skill set first. Okay, so Iron Polearm here, right, deals damage equal to 130% of attack to an enemy with a 30% chance of inflicting stun for 1 turn. And you have a 30% chance of triggering Pursuit through Iron Polearm. So what this means is that you have a 30% chance to continue attacking again. And the thing is, when you trigger Iron Polearm again, you will then have another 30% chance to trigger Iron Polearm once again. So you can just keep on going. So I have seen him attack like up to 7 times in a row. So this is probably his main selling point. But of course, that's not all, right? He still has 2 other skills. Let's take a look at skill 2, Talisman of Inward Devilry. Attacks an enemy 2 times, each dealing damage equal to 120% of attack, and you ignore 40% of enemy's defense, and you have a 50% chance to use Iron Polearm after this skill is used. So this second skill actually bounces back into his first skill, which then possibly triggers even more of his first skill. But one very important thing here is that you ignore 40% of enemy's defense, which I think makes him a really good counter against Dona in PvP. Because I think it's quite possible to even just one-shot a Dona with his second skill. His damage is extremely strong, and we can take a look at that in just a bit. And finally, for his third skill, this is Avatara. I don't know why it's called Avatara, like SWAT Avatara. But anyway, attacks an enemy 3 times, each dealing damage equal to 100% of attack. Now, if a critical hit is triggered, then Tang can use Iron Polearm to trigger Pursuit on the target. So basically this hits a lot of times, like hits 3 times, and then you have a 100% chance to use Iron Polearm, which then triggers even more Iron Polearms. And of course, finally, we are going to end off with his little buff over here, which is an attack buff for 18%, and then we're going to move on to the relics. Okay, so this is the way I built him. This is not necessarily the way that is most common. In fact, I don't even think I know anyone else who built him the same way that I do. And in fact, I think if you take a look at the strategy over here, yeah, look at that. So the most popular is going to be Hades. Second most popular is also going to be Hades. And then finally, we have War Machine. And I am not surprised because these few relics, they're going to like boost his survivability, they're going to boost his damage. And of course, he's a beast with Hades and Avatara because when he counterattacks, he can potentially counterattack a few times, and not only that, heal himself up. So he can be a little bit more self-sustaining, especially in content such as PvP. But for me, I decided to go with Ocean Waves because I feel like his potential lies in not his first skill, so to speak, but rather his second and his third skill. And the reason is very simple, right? Because his second skill has a 50% chance to proc Iron Polearm, and his third skill has a 100% chance to proc Iron Polearm. So these are much greater than just simply 30%. So I would prefer if he uses his second and third skill a lot more often, and that's where Ocean Waves comes in. So the way I build him is also slightly different. If you notice, he has 45 speed, and that's all from one relic over here. He has 45 speed over here, and the reason why I give him more speed is because I'm using him in Fafnir, and in Fafnir, the more speed you have, the better, the more times you're able to break the Fafnir boss shield. And also the speed also makes him slightly more reliable in, let's say, the Temporal Tower, where you have a little bit more turns to take and therefore you deal more damage and you land a little bit more stuns with his first skill. So I think this is the way that I like to play him. This is not necessarily how you should do it, especially since Ocean Waves is kind of expensive as a relic set, and Avatara as well. So very importantly, what you want to have is you don't really need a 100% crit rate because his third skill, right, he hits 3 times. So there is a really good chance that you're going to crit anyway. So you don't really need 100%, but I'm just going with it because I can. And of course, a lot of attack and as much crit damage as you can. So that's basically how you build him. You don't necessarily need accuracy for his stun though. I don't really feel that his stun is that reliable since there is only a 30% chance to stun anyway. But yeah, so let's take a look at some of the content that he excels in. Now, if you find this video helpful so far, consider subscribing if you want to support the channel. And do note that subscribing is free and you can always change your mind afterwards. Okay, so the first place has to be Fafnir, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Fafnir. I will do it in a separate video because, okay, so this run takes way too long, right? And I just want to gloss over like the important points. So the thing is, he does a lot of damage, so he's going to be one of your main DPS Espers in Fafnir. But not only that, right, he also multi-hits a lot, so his first skill has a possibility to proc multi-hits. Same goes for his second and his third skill, which hits a lot of times. So I think he's the only Esper in this game that can reliably hit 4 times in one skill, and that's his third skill. So he has a lot of value in Fafnir, and I think he is a must build for Fafnir, not only because he's so cheap to build, so easy to max out, and just so easy to resonate, but his damage is also pretty insane. So obviously he has the highest damage cap in this game because he can potentially multi-hit 1,000 billion times. So that makes him very reliable in terms of DPS, because even his normal attacks hit very hard. Now let's take a look at how powerful he can be for PvP, right? So as you can see here, Dona is going to be a very common pick in PvP, especially in many defenses. So let's take a look at whether Tang Yun can sufficiently one-shot a Dona, and that's all that I care about, right? Okay, so we're gonna go with a AP push, attack buff, crit rate up. We don't really need a crit buff over here. Probably freeze something, kinda need this. And I just realized that my Tang Yun is slightly faster than my Rip, faster than my Lin Xiao, so we're not gonna get the defense break here. Okay, so let's take a look at how much damage we can do without a defense break on his second skill, which ignores 40% of enemies' defense. Hopefully we trigger Pursuit as well, so goodbye Dona. Okay, so that was like 7k per hit. If not for the shield relic, we could have possibly one-shot him, and especially if we had a defense break. Okay, so we're just going to alter the rest of this. It's so far pretty okay. I think Tang Yun works the best when you're using him in your offense team, not so much in your defense team, because in the defense team, your AI is going to go stupid, right? He's not going to know exactly who to hit. And the worst thing that could happen is if an enemy brings in a Dona and a Sally at the same time, and your Tang Yun decides to hit the Sally instead. But because everyone knows that Sally is incredibly tanky, so she's going to be a pain in the butt to handle. So yeah, I think he's a little bit better in point 1 offense, so that's possibly also why I don't really see him used that much, because yeah, like I said, he's not that great in a defense team, but he excels in the offense team. So I guess that's it, right? We basically have this in the bag, and I'm surprised that we did not even lose anyone up against a defensive console. This can be quite interesting. I might actually play this a little bit more just to counter the Dona meta right now. Okay, and I'm sorry that I already took up 7 minutes of your life. I will shorten this as much as I can. So the final place is going to be the Temporal Tower, where he kind of excels in as some kind of a backup stunner, and he does a lot of DPS as well. So as you can see from this lineup that I'm running him with, there is only one DPS, and that is solely Tang Yun. So he is more than enough DPS on his own in order for me to clear upwards to the 50th floor as well. So currently we are only on the 46th floor, so there's quite a few more ways to go, but he's going to be super clutch for this content. So I think his kit is very simple and very easy to understand, right? He does a lot of damage, well, potentially, and he can also stun on his first skill, which makes him rather reliable in certain situations. But of course, you cannot always rely on his first skill to stun. Okay, but coming from a statistics point of view, even though his stun rate is only like, okay, rather his proc rate is only 30%, but we must also consider the long-term average of him proccing more of his first skill, which also increases the overall rate of you landing a stun with his first skill. So I think that's basically it. He's just a really good DPS, and that's about it, but he does his job really well, and I use him for pretty much all of my temporal runs, except that sometimes I switch between him and Sander, who is kind of like the same thing, but I think Sander is just so much more powerful because he scales off speed, whereas Tang Yun is just strictly a pure DPS. Okay, so with that said, I can end the video over here. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now this has been Daddy Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.